Good evening, Belize, and welcome to XTV's news broadcast for Wednesday, November 27, 2024. Making the headlines tonight, Central Bank reports glowing real GDP figures and downward inflation rate. Credit reporting system to be introduced by 2026, and Ramnari's family unopposed to enhancement of surveillance footage of triple murder. We take our first break and return with the news in detail. Welcome back. With your news, I am Marisol Amaya. The Central Bank of Belize, CBB, has reported a glowing real GDP growth for Belize compared to other countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, except Guyana, who is on an exceptional growth path due to their recent oil discovery. The figures were provided by Central Bank Governor Karim Michael at a press conference this morning. It is the second such media briefing this year and covered a range of topics. Michael set the stage by painting a broad picture of the times we are living in.
We are currently living in what many have now dubbed an era of polycrisis. This is evidenced by heightened geopolitical tensions and conflicts, lingering supply chain issues, political deglobalization, and deepening fragmentation through trade, increased volatility, increasing cybersecurity threats, disruption through artificial intelligence, and of course, the climate crisis, among many others. At our core, and in the face of all these challenges, the Central Bank of Belize exists to provide stability and an enabling environment through the protection of our fixed exchange rate peg and safeguarding the essential services provided by our financial system, including protection of savers for the well-being of Belize.
Michael reported that Belize's real GDP growth since the pandemic is being driven by the bounce back in tourism.
The Belizean economy has proved itself to be resilient. We have weathered the COVID pandemic, the oil price shock coming out of the Russia-Ukraine war, and weather shocks from Hurricane Lisa in 2022 and other adverse climate-related events. Today, we can confidently say that since the onset of the pandemic and these additional external shocks, our economy has fully recovered. Indeed, real GDP per person in 2023 was above what would have been implied by a continuation of pre-pandemic levels. So simply put, if we didn't have the shock, the dotted line here shows that real GDP per capita would have been somewhere around 13,500 per citizen per person within the population. As it is, we're some $2,000 above that at 15,500. On the right-hand side, when we look at the growth among sectors, you could see that previously the primary and secondary sector, this dark blue and red, were affected by weather, disease, labor factors, including the high costs of fertilizer. And what you saw was that the tertiary sector, particularly services and tourism, was really driving economic performance in 2022 and 2023. Now, performance for this year, you can see that growth is now more broad-based. And this buoyancy of domestic economic activity year to date is expected to continue into the last quarter. Now, on an annual basis, the Central Bank of Belize projects that the economy will grow to about 7% in 2024. This annual growth outpaces the IMF's projected 2024 growth rates for several Central American and Caribbean countries and is well above the average. The average is on the far right. This is for the Latin American Caribbean region of 2.1% expected overall.
Using the figures of the Statistical Institute of Belize, Michael also pointed to a decreasing inflation rate.
Inflation pressures have weakened, and it is now trending downward. Now, while growth in real GDP terms, along with the rise in minimum wage, have helped to raise income, rising costs have partially offset these income gains for many Belizean households. Belizeans have faced tough trade-offs to stretch their dollar as they navigate trying to maintain living standards and manage expenses. Now, inflation has retreated from its 2022 peak of 6.3%. We are the red dotted line, to 3.6% in September. It is expected to dip further to around 3% or below in 2025. This range now might be the new normal, 2 to 3%. Now, this inflation experience has not been unique to Belize, but all countries have grappled with higher inflation since 2021. As the chart shows, countries have similarly begun to see inflation easing, largely reflecting by the unwinding of supply chain disruptions that we saw earlier in the pandemic, the easing of energy and commodity price pressures caused by the Russia-Ukraine war, and the effectiveness of monetary policy tightening seen in higher interest rates and slowing demand in advanced countries. Looking at the chart on the right, which is a very interesting chart, we see that in 2021 and 2022, inflation was largely externally driven, means imported through fuel and other imported food items. And this accounted for roughly 65% of inflation. This trend flipped in 2023 with increases in the prices for domestically produced food items alone contributing to 44.2% of inflation. Adding in services and domestically generated inflation accounted for 66.2% of total inflation in 2023. This persists or will persist in 2024, with the domestic component largely reflecting local food costs, restaurant service costs, and to a lesser extent, home rental prices, contributing to 63.7% of total inflation.
Michael also sounded the alarm of inflation resulting from climate change impacts due to the loss of agricultural crops. He was asked about any limitations in the calculation of inflation, especially given that people going to the store keep seeing prices going up rather than decreasing.
It depends how or what goes into the basket of which CPI is based. Now, you may very well be right in that that basket needs to be looked at and examined if it's representative of the common things which an average household is facing. So I agree with you. And then, but that's not me. I mean, that's not the central bank to look at. That is definitely what the SIB, and I'm sure the SIB looks at its methodology frequently. There's the common methodology. These are all the tools that we have. You have the consumer price index, and then you have the producer price index. These are things which should be constantly evaluated according to best practice and methodology.
Another aspect we challenged was the debt to GDP ratio, which is still being reported at 64%, especially since the government has gone to the National Assembly multiple times for loan approvals since the 2021 signing of the Blue Bond and the subsequent rebasing that significantly reduced our debt to GDP ratio. Here's how Michael explained the figure, among which there's a loan including the Belize $90 million Saudi loan for the University Hospital and the Belize $14 million loan from the IDB for a fisheries stock assessment, among others.
The rebasing, as you said, added 27% onto the previous calculation of GDP. Think about that, 27% of maybe 5 billion or 4 billion. Think about the impact of that. You're changing the denominator in your ratio. Now, the Blue Bond was roughly cut in half. I don't recall off the top of my head, but maybe somebody can help me here. So the Blue Bond was cut in half. You have other amortization that has been taking place as well, where we have because of the fiscal discipline and prudence on the external debt side, that we have been repaying and reducing the principal balances on our entire loan portfolio, and we've been doing so effectively. Those changes, as well as others, I'm kind of said that one day, those changes still don't, those changes outweigh any increase that you just cited on the domestic debt side in totality. So you might have domestic debt, which has been these supplemental bills going to the House, increasing by this amount, which has been completely overshadowed and outweighed by those changes, the rebasing, the retirement of existing loan obligations, coupled and along with the blue bond, that far outweigh those increases you see. And we have all the numbers to match that.
I would want to see those numbers. And when you say blue bond cut in half, you mean that it was reduced from the 100, close to 130% where we were at that time?
No. Sorry. I'm talking about the principal value of the blue bond.
Okay.
So if the blue bond was close to 600 or maybe 550 million US, that principal amount that we owed was sliced, was cut. So the 133%, which I think you're referring to, is the debt to GDP ratio
at that time,
that existed before the rebasing. Like I said,
before the blue bond.
Absolutely.
Michael explained that as a result of the rebasing, 27% of the previous GDP was added to the new GDP, as well as around 4 years of good growth. At its press conference today, the Central Bank of Belize informed that a credit reporting system that provides for a consumer's credit score is expected to be launched at best by the end of next year or in 2026. According to Central Bank Governor Karim Michael, this will contribute to increased access to financing through loans and inclusion as people build their credit profiles. It is estimated that currently 30% of Belizeans remain unbanked. Michael argued that the lack of banks' access to information about consumers' credit risk contributes to higher lending rates. Once the credit reporting system goes live, consumers will be able to build reputational collateral based on their credit history using non-traditional data. He outlined some of the information providers that will feed into the system to provide the credit history. He emphasized, though, that the customer must first approve that their data be released.
Part of your credit score is actually how you have been paying your utility bill. So think, when I mention and when I talk about non-traditional forms of assessing your credit history and repayment capacity, this is one of those things. Key players in the credit reporting system are these credit information providers. They provide credit data to the credit bureau and will include banks, credit unions, money lenders, utility, and insurance companies, DFC, and any other person that the central bank may designate. Importantly, credit information providers are required to obtain consumer consent prior to sharing information on a consumer to a credit bureau. This is a key point to note, and this is the protection of data.
Additionally, Michael says the consumer is entitled to know what data is submitted to the banks by a credit information provider, and they should be able to access a free copy of their credit report once every year. In other banking news, the new banknotes bearing the images of our national heroes George Price and Philip Golson are expected to be here by January 2025. Central Bank Governor Karim Michael announced today that the new and enhanced design to be unveiled will feature security and counterfeit protection. He once more reiterated that the replacement of the Queen will not reduce the value of the currency.
I must stress that while our new banknotes will look different, the value remains the same. Design does not equal value. A dollar is still a dollar. our rate of exchange rate remains the same, which is $2 billion to $1. And just again, for more information, the removal of the monarch's portrait is not novel. This is not unique to Belize by any means. Belize will be joining a growing list of Commonwealth countries that once featured Queen Elizabeth II on their money, but no longer do today.
The current bills in circulation will remain valid. Governor Michael explained that since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, they would have eventually been faced with the decision of a cutoff point to use her image, and so that represented an opportunity to consider using the image of the new monarch or Belizean national heroes. After the break, Belize Bank introduces daily and weekly transactional limits on credit cards. Stay with us.
Drugstore, 28 Freetown Road, where you are better off alive than dead. Freetown Drugstore, telephone 223-2876.
Welcome back. The news continues. The Ramnare's family in Belmopan has issued a statement about the progression of the triple murder case against former police corporal Elmer Na. They had committed to do an interview a couple weeks ago, but decided instead to issue a statement. This was generally in response to the report from the new counsel for Na, Senior Counsel Godfrey Smith, after a recent adjournment, that they are lining up foreign experts to enhance the surveillance video which captured the murders. Na has repeatedly stated that if this is done, it will be determined he was not the one who committed the horrendous crime on New Year's Eve 2022. In their statement today, the Ramnare's family affirmed that they are not opposed to the video being enhanced. As to the call from Smith that the defense be provided access to crucial matters, the family appealed to the DPP's office to, quote, comply with the requirements of the court so that we can see a just progression and conclusion of this matter, especially a motive for this heinous crime, end quote. We do note here, though, that this case is not being handled by the office of the DPP, as a special prosecutor was allowed in the person of Terrence Williams from Jamaica. The Belize Bank recently introduced transactional limits on its credit cards. In the case of an individual account, the limit is 10 purchases, whether online, via an application like Uber, or at points of sales, and 40 purchases per week. For someone who is traveling, that can be very limiting. Agatha Ruta, Belize Bank's Chief Operations Officer, told Creme News XTV that they will introduce changes next year that will allow customers to lift the limit themselves.
These limits are there as anti-fraud rules, right? As anti-fraud prevention. Why? Because if any fraudsters are attacking the portfolio, and this is not unique to Belize, it's happening across the world, then the limits are protecting our customers from getting hit. However, what we are doing right now, as we acknowledge that customers not necessarily are counting all transactions on the daily basis, weekly basis to understand where they are, at the beginning of next year, we will be launching the entire new experience for our customers who have credit cards with us, and customers will be able to see not only their limit and balance as right now, but they will be able to see all of their transactions for the day, whether they are coming close to their daily limit or weekly limit, so they can open it themselves if they know that they are traveling. So they can control and monitor this themselves. That will empower them to really use the credit card significantly better. And that will also, on our side, bring a lot of efficiencies. So they don't need to call the bank at night so we can open certain parameters or limits for them, but they can do it directly from the mobile bank application. All of this self-service around credit cards will be launched, like I've mentioned, in the first quarter of next year. Customers will have capability to block their cards themselves, unblock their cards as well, apply for co-applicants if they want to tie somebody to their card. They will have all of that available. Even they will be able to report fraud directly, and all of that will be real time.
In other news, today we met Yaya Marin Coleman, chairperson of the UBAD Educational Foundation, UEF, protesting for a third day in front of the Ministry of Education's Belize District Education Center on Mahogany Street in Belize City. Yaya is demanding a national hair policy or law in place of memorandums or circulars that are issued by the ministry whenever there is an individual case of discrimination against a student over their hair, which leads to that student being sent away from school. She provided an update while showcasing another African hairstyle, given that UEF advocates for Black Belizeans.
had asked the Minister of Education, Francis Fonseca, if the state have one here policy. And the minister said, yes, they have one, and that they send out circulars and maybe memos to individual schools whenever they get one report of hair discrimination or Belizean students get denied access to education. Now, I may call, and I just don't want to call the person name. We're in charge of the policy unit for the Ministry of Education. So I love it. They loan blow hand, holla thing out of me, I holla thing out of them. They bring water, fruits to me. Anyways, so early when I think I first became aware of the hair discrimination and denial to education, I think it was September 4th. So today that day 83, we have one calling campaign on Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes, XTV, simulcast on Creme Radio as well. So I called the policy unit on September 4th, and the person had good talking with me and tell me that no, the Ministry of Education don't have one hair policy, but if I want to follow up with the Chief Education Officer and the Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry, I can. So this week I sent one email, no, last week I sent one email to the person and I said, listen, you may tell me you don't have one hair policy. The minister in our interview still don't have one. So if you don't have one now, please send it to me. The person don't answer back. So I called yesterday and then they tell me the person I think in our workshop. So I want to follow up to say, the person will just tell me I get it and I don't answer you. Because I can't understand if the minister say then got it, and you that your job for write policy and make sure policy go through, and you say you don't get it. At this point, I go say you don't want to send nothing in a writing, but I still create the paper trail. That's one thing. The second thing, I talked to an attorney for asking what are the difference between our policy and the law. And the person said with the policy that usually come from the cabinet, but when you have one policy, you usually have penalties that are enforceable. Then you have to look at the word of the legislature, I think, for then look upon all the laws of Belize, to review it, to say anything we have to do with hair, education, discrimination, and then they could look at, based on one policy, and of course the cabinet would need guidance from people like you here for to lead this process, to say what should be in our hair policy, what the penalties may be, and then it could go to the, as far as making it to a law that is enforceable.
Yaya intends to hold 2 more protests this year. They are scheduled for the 11th and 18th of December. She thanked everyone who has supported her during these protests. In cabinet news, the Trade Licensing Reform Act has been in the works for years now. In late 2022, the issue became a hot topic again when it was revealed that the proposed reform would require more entrepreneurs to seek a trade license to continue doing business. Entertainers opposed trade license requirements for them, and that proposal was retracted, among others. Eventually, the law was passed, with a date of effect being January 1, 2025. Well, today, Cabinet announced it has decided to delay its implementation until October 2025. The delay, we are told, has to do with the fact that trade licenses are collected until November anyway, or paid for then, and the government wants to allow for more education on the law. Meanwhile, beginning December 1 this year, electronic immigration and custom departure and arrival forms will be introduced for travelers entering or departing the country via the Philip Golson International Airport. The new e-forms will be introduced alongside paper forms. Cabinet announced that the long-term plan will be to introduce these new e-forms to all ports of entry by the end of January 2025. The paper forms will eventually be phased out, with the target date for a complete phase-out set for March 31 next year. The switch is expected to enhance efficiency and security. In other news, there has been a lot of discussion currently surrounding the Maya culture and representation of their traditions and practices in other platforms. Several Maya people and groups have expressed their displeasure on social media about the Dare Dance being selected by the Miss Universe Belize organization as the national costume for our contestant at the Miss Universe pageant in Mexico City this month. Others complained about the Honorable Moses Shine Barrow using a Maya temple as the background for the cover shot in his The Honorable Shine documentary. Most have cited that it disrespects their culture and sacred beliefs, while some have called it cultural appropriation. Today we asked Kim Vasquez, the director of the Institute of Creative Arts, to chime in on the topic of cultural appropriation.
Well, when you talk about cultural appropriation, it's usually from an outside source and not from within. And I think when we look at Belize, we have to really reflect on the fact that we are very diverse. We're blessed. We have a wealth of different ethnicities. And as we move forward, you are going to see that culture continues to be dynamic. Culture is alive. At Niche, we talk about living heritage. We don't have any control over that. Culture, like I said, is alive. And it's hard to really say you are appropriating what is yours. You know, like I said, if you look at some of our backgrounds, we are of a mixture. Many of us, most of us, few of us can say, I am 100% Garifuna, or I am 100% Maya. And we share and we appreciate and we elevate, but I don't know if we are actively trying to or even intending to appropriate, because it is Belizean.
After the break, Belizeans transiting through the UK require ETA next year and major tourism developments planned for Punta Gorda. Stay tuned.
yourself a merry little Christmas.
Beginning January 8, 2025, Belizeans traveling to or transiting through the United Kingdom will have to apply for an electronic travel authorization ETA, which costs around Belize $25 to $30. According to the UK Embassy in Belize, it takes about 10 minutes to apply for the ETA online using a cell phone. In a press release today, the embassy also informed that the ETA is issued within hours and lasts for 2 years or expires when your passport expires. It allows for stays in the UK of up to 6 months at a time. The embassy is quick to point out, though, that an ETA is not a visa and that by the end of 2025, everyone except British and Irish citizens will need permission in advance to travel or transit through the UK. Belizean students or persons wanting to enter the UK for work or to live need to apply for the relevant entry clearance or visa. The UK has billed the ETA requirement as a means of making travel safer and more efficient in the digital age. Major infrastructure developments are planned for Punta Gorda, Toledo, with an emphasis on attracting more tourists. Cabinet has given its approval for a marina development and modern infrastructure for that municipality. It is expected to drive tourism growth in Toledo and the South in general, which in turn is expected to spark economic growth. Cabinet also approved the extension of the hours of operations at the Punta Gorda port of entry. The port will now be operational during weekends. This move will also be paired with targeted marketing to boost visitor numbers to the south, using Toledo's natural attractions and cultural heritage as a means to entice more visitors. Most municipalities are left with damaged streets and potholes following the passage of Tropical Storm Sarah and periods of rain before it. In Belmopan, the City Council is looking to address several parts of the city that received the most infrastructural damage caused by excessive rain. J.B. Wade of the Belmopan City Council spoke of the areas that the council is looking to address.
Due to all the weather that we've been having, our infrastructure has been hit very hard. The council is actively working weekends. Sometimes they're even out at night working to try and catch up with the road repairs. Yes, sometimes we do find that some of the repairs are done with just raw earth material instead of asphalt, but it is something that we have to do because we have to make sure that we build it up before we put the asphalt on it. And unfortunately, Belmopan doesn't miss a cloud with rain. So whenever we put these things in there, by the time we get back to them to try and fill them up with the asphalt, the rain has already come and destroyed again. But it's an ongoing fight with the council. We are committed to try to make sure that we repair all these streets and all these potholes. There are certain areas that we are actively doing full grading. We are currently doing grading at the Hillview, Las Lomas area. We're doing the 4 major streets up there. We're grading those, and we're looking at the possibility of hopefully bringing them up to pave standard and paving them. That is in the future for the council. That's one of our projects that we're looking at. We're also looking at the Mountain View area that also needs some repairs. When we're looking at that area to do complete repavement of that area as well. That is also on the table to get done. We're also looking at the area next to they call the police housing area. That is an area that we have identified as somewhere that needs to be fixed as well.
Total Business Solutions Limited, TBSL, today held its 9th Geo Education Expo at the Ramada by Wyndham Princess Hotel in Belize City. The expo, which was delayed a week due to Tropical Storm Sarah, is held to celebrate Geographic Information Systems GIS Day, which is observed worldwide. Loretta Palacio, Managing Director at TBSL, says GIS technology is used in various sectors and the event focuses on spreading information on GIS technology to students. Some 1,000 students were expected to attend from across the country. Palacio shared more information on GIS and the expo.
Back in 2011, we decided that we will join the rest of the world to celebrate GIS Day, and it's focused mostly on education, students, educators, to understand how GIS or geospatial technology is used in the curriculum in schools. So learning could be more fun and easier. Teaching could be much more easier and interactive. And so if you go on a map, any GIS Day map around the world, you see the whole globe light up with activities from Europe down to South America, all over the world, Caribbean, doing carrying activities for their students and their young people. And we said in 2011, no, we can't be left behind. Our students, our educators need to know about this technology. The Ministry of Education needs to know about this technology. And so we've been engaging. It's taken us a while, but I'm happy to say that we're making progress with the effort to highlight the importance and to say Ministry of Education, students, teachers, this technology is important for our students. It is supporting national development, as you may know. If you have electricity in your house, it's in ArcGIS. BEL uses it to distribute power, to support their distribution of power. Belize Water Services to distribute water, SIB for census, BSI-ASR, for their sugar production, looking at the farmers' properties, forecasting, pest control. And so Belize City Council, we have so many of them. The government of Belize departments, they're here. And so you will hear about the flooding. You've been hearing about the flooding. In Belize, it's not only about our students learning and our teachers getting the right tools, but for us to get serious about this technology in national development.
And a dance showcase will be featured at the Bliss Center for the Performing Arts in Belize City this weekend during 2 shows in 2 days. The Brook Makachista Dance Showcase, as it's called, will feature the namesake Creole dance, but will also feature dances from different cultures. More than a dozen dancers and almost 24 dance performances will be showcased across both days. Kim Vasquez, the director of the Institute of Creative Arts, ICA, spoke more on the dance and on Brook Makachista.
So on Friday and Saturday, we have what is for us the start of a new dance initiative, a new focal point for dance through the Institute of Creative Arts and the Bliss Center for Performing Arts, and that is Brook Makachista. So for this year, we are starting it off with a showcase, but I can tell you with certainty that it is our plan that it will grow, and that come next year we will have an expanded program that will not only have a showcase, but will be open up to regional and international participation. And we want to have as well components like a forum, some discussions, as well as training and workshop for the dance community. And we were also looking for something that was new and uniquely Belizean in relation to dance. And Brook Makachista is very much uniquely Belizean. We were trying to trace the background of the word Brook Makachista, and we heard some the Creole Council tried to give us some guidance as well, and they said, well, of course we know it to be a children's ring game. And it is associated with a dance move that is essentially a gyration of the body, wind up the body. Interestingly enough, Belize National Dance Company actually has Brook Makachista as a dance move within their repertoire as well. So it is a recognized dance move. But definitely, like I said, it speaks to Belizean traditional ring game. We do have different cultures participating. We have Ugundani Garifuna dance group from in Belize, for example, from in Belize City, as well as Lirahunu Satuye dance club from down in Dangriga. We have the August Pine Ridge cultural group from up in Orange Walk. So we have opened it up as much as we can this year. And next year we really want to expand. And as I said, it's for all forms of dance.
Althea Seeley of the Belize National Dance Company recalled dancing Brook Makachista as a child and being taught by Bob Renner to bring the dance to the stage.
Brook Makachista is something that we hear. It's even a game that we used to play when we were younger, right? And whatever dance, any folk dance, you depicts your everyday life. So if that's a game that we used to play as children, and it's always good to take it to the stage, and that's how that become, Rock Macachista. It's a game, traditional game, and we take it to the stage. Mr. Babrino was a dance teacher, he was a tailor, he was a musician, he was all that. And he had his dance studio downstairs, St. Mary's Hall, way back in the 60s. And I guess before my time, there were so many people before my time. My time was in the 1968. And after he left, Leomar took over, which is Marjorie Bradley and Leo Henry. They took over his tradition, and then after that we went on where we become the older girls. So then there was another company that branched from him by the name of Creative Dancers, and that has to do with names that you're familiar with: Rebecca McPherson, Salita Costa. If I count names, I might be in trouble. Ilona Smith, Don Campbell. It's a whole lot of this. Louis, Margie Lewis, that whole little crowd. We were all children for Bobby. Yes, I'm appealing to all artists. If you're a musician, if you're a drama person, dance, I'm sure you want to continue to show your talent. So you all need to come out and support so that we could have a stage for the younger generation to enjoy just the same way we did. So please come out, support us. It's going to be good.
The two different shows will each begin at 7 p.m. on Friday and 4 p.m. on Saturday. Tickets are available at the Bliss for $25. All proceeds will go to support the work of the Bliss Theatre. And with that, we have come to the end of our newscast. A repeat can be viewed on this station later tonight at 9 and again tomorrow at midday. Join me again tomorrow for another news broadcast. I am Marisol Amaya. Have a safe and enjoyable evening.